looks like no fishing for today. Hello everybody, welcome to my Windy Days fishing tips. Now this isn't specifically about tips on fishing during the wind, it's more it's windy so I can't go fishing, so I'm going to kind of do some non-fishing fishing tips or something like that. But anyways, it's windy outside and I'm not really thrilled about getting on the water in those conditions, so I'm going to just kind of post a couple of these tips and tricks videos. So this is my first one, and this one's going to be about how I basically prep for fishing down here in the lower Keys, and how I kind of decide where and what and when and so forth, and the web programs that I use to kind of help myself figure out what is the best opportunities for the upcoming trip that I'm planning. So this kind of might help you out if you're coming down and want to do some research prior to getting down here, or if you're already down here, it might help you out to try to kind of get things a little bit more narrowed down. But anyways, starting with the wind, since that's what's causing me to do this video, I use an app called Wind Finder, and I think it's a pretty established and a well-rounded program that people feel is fairly good. I see it used quite often in fishing reports, so I'm kind of comfortable, and it seems to be fairly accurate down here, so I utilize it. And you can find that at windfinder.com. What I go to and use it for is basically to find out what the wind's going to be like and what direction is this going to be from, and it also gives a general wave heights and conditions. I think it's kind of probably was geared towards the windsurfers at first, or sailing. So, but anyways, I use it as well. If you can look through today's Sunday, November 15th, we're looking at winds coming from the northeast and the east. Wind speeds are 20s, low 20s all the way across, all the way through the whole day. And another important aspect to look at is wind gusts, because they're going to hit you and you're going to feel those, so you might as well take them into considerations. So they're all mid-20s. So realistically, if someone asks me what the winds are going to be like, I'm going to tell them it's going to be mid-20s, because that's what's going to be gusting through at. This also does include wind directions. In this instance, it's good to know is that when the wind is following the wave direction, it's actually not as horrible as it could seem, and it could be a lot worse if the wave direction is fighting the wind. That's when you start getting those big breakers and a lot of chop and really sloppy washing machine type conditions out there. So although it's not so great, it's probably better of the worst. And then, like I said, the wave heights 4s to 5s. So, and remember, these are more inshore waters. You're not talking offshore. So you're talking within a couple miles of shoreline, 3 miles, 4 miles of shoreline. So 4 to 5 feet inshore is rough. And I would not recommend going out there in your kayak. You can. It might be good for the windsurfers. I think they probably are happier hell that it's blown like this. But for what we're doing and fishing, not really what we're looking for, as well as just getting some general cloud, and if it's going to be raining, precipitation and down here. So it's a well-rounded temperatures. So it's a well-rounded program, and I like that it gets you about a week plus out. I think 8 days out, and that gets me the ability to kind of forecast my offshore days. So I know through Wednesday it's still pretty rough out there, but then on Thursday, Friday, it starts calming down a bit. And then the farther that you get away from your actual date is a little bit more erratic these reports are. So a lot of times it does calm down quite a bit from even what these are forecast, especially the wave heights. So that's looking like my next opportunity where I might be able to get some deeper water fishing in. But otherwise, the key things I do is every morning I flash over here. I want to see the wind gusts, wind directions, and wave heights. And from there I go to step 2, which I match that with Google Maps. And here's Key West and Lower Keys going towards the east, towards Miami. And I take those conditions knowing that the wind today is actually going to follow like US 1. It's kind of going down towards a southwesterly direction from the northeast down to the southwest. So it's really, I look at the freeway, that's kind of the wind's going to be going. And what that's going to mean is I am not going offshore, so I would do some inshore fishing. So anywhere that you are butt up against any of the keys, it's going to provide a little bit of protection and give you a little bit of calmer waters that you can fish. So realistically, anywhere along any of these channels that are close to land masses will provide good coverage, especially if you wanted to go fish the northwest channel over here. Key West provides a good wind block in fishing the channel here, and it'll still get you some offshore type species out there, because you get a lot of current flushes through there, so you get everything will run through there. So that would be a good opportunity there. I tend to like to shy away from the crowds and get away from stuff. So my Shark Key, where I fish out of a lot, which is on the Geiger Key area here in this launch, this is well protected, and it's a main Gulf to Atlantic Channel fishing area or water travel through here. So any of these are always good. And then I can still fish inshore anywhere along in these coveted areas here, because remember, wind's got to blow over these Saddle Bunch keys, and it's going to cause a bit of a wind break. And then so anywhere these inshore close to the shorelines are fairly sheltered there. Now any of these exposed, once you start getting away from the islands, because you're just talking mangroves and we don't have any sky rises or mountains or anything out here, it doesn't provide a lot of coverage. So you're talking, you need to be within 100 feet of the shoreline, 50 feet to 100 foot at most from the shore in order to feel that wind protection. Because once you start getting out in this area here, you're going to get that 2-3 foot slop out there, and you're on your way to Cuba. So it's not great, but it's just knowing that you can get out. Let's say it's coming from the north, same deal. You'd fish the Atlantic side. If it's blowing from the south, you head up here to the Gulf side, and then you find that protected areas, and you can do still get some good fishing in. And that's right, exactly how I plan my days, and why it's very difficult for when people saying I'm coming down in a month or 2 months or 3 months. What am I going to be fishing for? And most of the time, the guys are going to say, well, it's in history-wise, these are the things that are biting during that time frame, but you really need to kind of wait to see what the wind conditions are going to be like to be able to tell if you're going to be able to get offshore, if you're going to be able to get to the reef, if you're going to be fishing the Gulf side or the Atlantic side. So it's just something to take into consideration. But just knowing that regardless of the winds, you can get out, and even if it's raining, it's 80 degrees down here, so it's a good thing to get rained on because it'll cool you off. So it's not a bad thing. Just flexibility in what you're fishing for makes things a lot better. The next site I use is it's called Tides for Fishing. Just a little website I found. It's okay. There's hundreds of websites on the tides, and I'm sure they all use the same buoys to figure it out. But basically, I look for this one because it gives you the low tide, high tide, gives you a little bit of when the fish are supposed to be biting, and they have a good map app that I could put on my iPhone. So even while I'm driving out, I can take a look at it at the dock wherever I'm launching from, and I could just do a quick and see where I'm going to be at. I really don't rely on the tides that much, except specifically if I'm targeting something inshore, because the Atlantic side, the outgoing tide is probably by far the best. Even though current is very important, the outgoing is much more important because it's flushing bait and food and out from the Gulf out into the Atlantic. So those channels are where the fish are going to move up to and start feeding on it. And on the flip side, if you're doing the flats fishing, incoming tide is good also for giving the ability for the fish to get on top of the flats, because you'll find down here the flats become actually land masses during low tides, especially the extreme low tides. So the fish move out to the deep, but when the tides start moving in, they're able to get higher up into the flats and start feeding. So it is a good requirement to know if you're doing specifically the flats fishing. But mine is kind of go when I can go, so I'm not going to look at the tide and say, oh, it's incoming tide, I guess I'm not going to go fishing. I'm going fishing regardless. It's just what I'm going to be fishing for and what's going to give me the best opportunity. I'm going to utilize this app for that. Then we go to the NOAA website, and that's the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. So this is the government-sponsored one, which is probably the most accurate in what a lot of things are based off of. I utilize this mainly for my offshore trips to find out what the true conditions are going to be like. For the keys, I basically plug into the buoy for the Sand Key Light, which is down southwest, I think 7 miles from Key West. But it gives basically from Key Largo all the way down to Key West, and the conditions out to 20 miles so to give you an idea of what the wave conditions are. So the first part of it is important because for offshore, in that it gives you the approximately edge of the Gulf Stream at different points. So for me, Sand Key Light, like today, it's basically 5 nautical miles south of Sand Key Light. So we're talking 12 miles off of Key West. And then as it gets closer to where I fish, which is about 10 miles up the road from Key West, so it's less than 5, so probably that 4.5 miles. So you're looking about 10, 11, 12 miles off. So I mean, it's roughly there is where I fish, but getting the Gulf down in the Keys, the Gulf Stream down in the Keys, and that close is not happening a lot. Usually it's 15, 20, 25, 30 miles out. Unlike where you could fish up in the Miamis up to the Palm Beach areas there, it's within a couple miles on average. We don't generally get to see it, and that's where you're going to get those pelagic bites really moving the bigger fish in and more accessible. So not so much helpful for us kayakers, but for the boaters it makes a big difference. And anything that it pushes in more inshore is good for fishing in general. But then as you come down, you'll have different spots for the Gulf, the Bay, Florida Bay, and then you start getting down to the lower Keys areas here, and it gives you, just like today, this afternoon, you're looking at northeast to east winds 20-25 knots, which we knew, seas 3 to 5 feet. Near water is very rough, small craft advisories, and this gives you about 3 or 4 days out. It gives Monday and Tuesday up to Thursday, and they're saying Thursday night, seas 1 to 3 feet, near shore waters a moderate chop. So getting out to the reef definitely wouldn't be a problem. But then we go a little bit farther, and this gets us out to 20 nautical miles. And again, small craft advisories, and you're looking at 6 to 9 feet. So you're looking at, you need one of those $1,500 a day charter boats to get out there. And even then, you kind of have to sweet talk those guys to let them know that you're not going to be puking over the whole side and want to cut it short and come in, because those guys don't want to get beat up as much as anybody else. And then that Wednesday, Thursday, 3 to 5 feet. So it's a bit sketchy to be out there even on Thursdays, so we'll have to take a look and see if that cleans up a bit. But that gives you more of an offshore, more structured outlook on what's going to be happening out there. Then fishing reports and general information. I always take a look at the Florida Sportsman's, the forums. They have the actual Florida Keys section, which I utilize primarily. We have a little bit different fisheries than the rest of Florida, so it's good to be kind of specific. But they do have it for all over Florida. The Key West, the Keys fishing reports, which basically guys post up what they're catching, where they're catching, and so on. I post under there under Kayaker in Key West is my handle, so I do post there, so you'll see some of my reports and back reports where I'm just starting to do the YouTube thing, so I'm posting videos. This is actually my first video, and then if you went down did some searches, I've got more just written in iPhone pictures on it. Then they've got the general forum in the Keys, which is just more informational, fishing information about the Keys, not necessarily what I've caught, but just other information that's good to follow just to keep up with things. And then if you go to the regions again and select the Florida Keys, there is a third section down that a lot of people I generally miss, but it's the Florida Keys weekend fishing forecast. And some of the charter captains posted this. I think it hits either late Thursday or Friday, and they just basically give a forecast. I think it's bi-weekly, so like this is October 30th through the November 1st, so yeah, they're a couple weeks behind, but you've got information for the backcountry, upper Keys, and then a little short blurb for the lower Keys, and just what's going on, what they've caught, what they see is coming up. So it's getting word of mouth from the charter captains is never a bad thing. It's just what they're willing to give up. So pretty good information just to kind of get the idea of what's going on. And another fishing informational reports is the Keys, Florida Keys Keynoter has a pretty good fishing reports. Although in Key West we've got the Keys News, the Key West Citizen I think it is, but they don't have a decent fishing report, and plus their online service is paid subscription, so it kind of sucks, so I don't really read that. So I do the Keynoter, and then they have a specific for fishing and diving. So they've got I think twice a week they post fishing information, which is pretty good. Just like the Florida Keys weekend report, they've got the same basic thing, and just kind of a few of the captains give up what they've been catching and what's going on, and some historical fishing information of what season's coming up. Like right now, they're talking about the sailfish and moving in, and prior to that one was all the bait changes and so forth. So pretty good informational piece to look at. And lastly, of course, is good old YouTube. This is my website. Just basic knowledge about fishing and you guys know anything about anything is on YouTube these days, so you can just post in on information about fishing the Florida Keys, fishing bonefish, fishing marlin, whatever, and you'll get quite a bit of information and videos on who, what, where, when, how, and so forth. So those are that kind of wraps it up. Those are my basic programs that I utilize, kind of just to figure out what and where and how and all the reasonings behind what I'm fishing for at the moment. I think the Keys is known for its great sports fishing, but I think another thing it offers is that regardless of the conditions, it gives you an opportunity to go fishing for something. So using these tools kind of will help you to figure out what you can do while you're down here and with what you've got. So hopefully you find that helpful. All right, see you later, guys. Thanks.